Hey guys, I'm Vab, and today I'll be taking you through how I got 81 in GAMSAT Section 3 three times in a row. So, a little bit about myself. Uh, I'm a first year medical student at the University of Melbourne, and I sat the GAMSAT thrice. So, once in March 2020, and then two other times in March and September 2022, and I scored 81 in all three sittings. And so the reason for making this video today is to help guide you peeps on how to score this well in the science section of the exam. So let's get straight into the tips. So the first and most important tip that I have for GAMSAT sitters is to not underestimate the importance of math. I kid you not, at least half of the exam is just mathematical manipulation. So that's like things like algebraic manipulation, simultaneous equations, logs, and being able to work with lots of different variables. So that whole mathematical component of things is really highly assessed in the GAMSAT, and it can show up in the form of equations, but it can also show up in the form of graphs. But the essence is that you got to be good at the maths and be fast at it too. So I would say that taking out the time to really make sure you're good with your maths, your graphs, and being able to do lots of calculations is really, really important. And I know it takes time to hone and practice, but I think it's very, very high yield in terms of improving your score, just because of how frequently it comes up in STEMs, even if it's biology and even in physics and chemistry as well. Now, this is a question that often is on the minds of students a lot. How much background knowledge does one need to know? Well, the way I think of it is the more background knowledge one has in the sciences, the faster it's going to help with reading and comprehension of STEMs. And there have been, many times across my exams where knowing some concepts, like for example, enthalpies or even EZ isomers, has enabled me to just understand the STEMs more quickly. And in my opinion, if I hadn't really seen those before, it would have been much more confusing and time consuming to work out. So I think it's important to have a bit of background knowledge, and especially in terms of important topics that GAMSAT frequently tests, like acids, bases, electrochemistry, because that's just going to help with from a speed perspective. But at the same time, you can't underestimate the importance of reasoning. It's a balance, and you need to be able to apply the background knowledge to the specific context you're given. So the way that I kind of explain it is I think it's important to put it into a scenario. So you could get a question about redox numbers, right? But instead of using actual chemicals, they use letters like A, B, C, D, E to represent chemicals or unknown chemicals. So you would already need to know how oxidation numbers work, and that would be the background knowledge that you know how oxidation numbers work in a normal context with elements like sodium, chloride, blah, blah, blah. That won't be explained in the STEM. They'll think it's background knowledge that you already know. And instead, you'd need to be able to apply your understanding of oxidation numbers to the situation on the spot. So that's where that's kind of illustrating that point where you need to have background knowledge in the back of your head to apply to the STEM. Um, there is another scenario that I can think of is you could be given a chemical formula like C3H8, and you need to be able to convert it to a structural formula. And it's like a background knowledge thing. And the way that you'll get it is you'll get a scenario on maybe it's a question where they're giving you a table of bond energies and asking you to calculate the enthalpies for different chemicals. And then the options are written as chemical formulas, so C3H8, C6H6, and you need to be able to recognize that C6H6 is benzene and draw out the benzene molecule so that you can see all the bonds, and then use the table of bond energies that they've provided to calculate the enthalpy of benzene. So it's the thing is you need to have the background knowledge of knowing how to convert between like a chemical formula and a structural formula. So like that's the sort of idea. I think, yeah, that's why I say it's like a balance. You need to have background knowledge in the back of your head to pull from when you're reasoning or answering the question. So balance both is my advice. All right, another question I often get is like, what are the best resources to prepare for um, the GAMSAT? And so for this, I would say that both the Des O'Neill and ACE papers are like excellent question banks to prepare, and they're pretty like out there. Everyone knows about them, and they help you get a sense of like what background knowledge and topics you need to know. So you can use those free resources as much as you can. And I know some of my friends bought other question banks to practice for themselves. But again, that's like individual choice. It's really up to you. Uh, I also write my own questions in the same reasoning style as GAMSAT, and I'm considering making some next videos showing these and walking through how to solve them. But I think a personal thing that I did to prepare for the graph aspect of the exam was to just read random journals and try and understand what their graphs were saying because I really struggled with the graph bit at one point, and so I just wanted to get better at that, and that helped prime me to unknown to it helped prime me to get used to the unknown graphs and wacky bio graphs they throw on us. So yeah, that was just something I did that I found was helpful, and yeah, I think those are the sort of ways you can use your resources to prepare. All right, the next question that often pops up is when to prepare. And the best answer I can give you is just the earlier the better. You know, just like any other skill, the more time you practice, the better you're going to get at it. Whether it's driving, cooking, sports, you name it. And I think the main thing is when you've been practicing for a prolonged period of time, you see the broader patterns across the question types, the subjects, and like the big ideas that they're testing, and that will help with big gains in your skill and your score. I would, when I was preparing, I made sure to set a certain amount of practice per week. And I know like some people who are preparing for the GAMSAT, they're working, and so was I at one point. And I think it's just important to always schedule in time for the GAMSAT. You know, like if you're working, make a time to do it before work, or just like anything else, it's gonna require dedication to succeed, and you know your time and effort. It's very difficult to pull off a good score without any practice. So keep that in mind and be patient because it does take time to develop the knowledge and refine your skills, especially your reasoning skills. Okay, I'm sure everyone wants to also know what's a good way to approach the actual exam, and a lot of my students have also asked this. I think the best approach that I suggest is, and it worked for me as well, was taking the first 5 minutes to glance throughout the entire paper and sort of decide which questions are the most doable for me, and then sort of write them down onto the blank paper and attempt those first. Uh, I think attempting the exam that way is just like way better because it builds momentum when you get those easy ones right, and you have a higher chance of getting those easy ones right if you do them at the start because you know your mind's fresh. But if you take the contrary of that and you do the hard ones to begin with, it can really put you behind, like, and make you lose your confidence as well. And I think that can be quite a stressful situation. But again, that's what worked for me, and I think that's the way I do it. But obviously, people might have different ways of going about it. If another important tip I suggest is like, if you're lost in the exam, you're completely clueless on a question, use the STEM to guide you to what's helpful and important. Like often they have, like the questions often try and guide you towards the right answer, and so does the STEM. So reread the STEM, reread the question, and try and see if you can get a better idea of what to do. And often I've found they always provide just enough information to be able to solve the problem. And finally, I'd make sure to guess and attempt all the questions by like 10 minutes before the exam, just to make sure you don't leave any blanks. Yeah. So that's sort of my approach. And yeah, if that's basically all my tips that I have for scoring well. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below and be happy to answer them. But for now, that's all. Thanks so much.